Welcome into the lounge. The draft is still feels pretty fresh. So we're bringing in the guy behind the draft, or at least one of the central figures here. General Manager Eric DeCosta joined us to break it all down, give us the behind the scenes scoop on what he was thinking throughout the whole process. I'm really looking forward to this.
Yeah, it does. The guests don't get any bigger than this, having the man who was behind the draft just a few days after it. So before we do that, we want to make sure that fans know there's only one truck strong enough to partner with the Lounge and the Ravens Podcast Network, and that's Ram Trucks, the back-to-back Motor Trend Truck of the Year. The Ram 1500 offers an available Ram Box cargo management system, 4-corner air suspension, and a huge amount of rear leg room.
Huge!
When properly equipped, the Ram 3500 is a heavy-duty workhorse that boasts 1,000 pounds of diesel torque. Go to ram.com to find your local Ram dealer and take advantage of the great offers going on right now. So thanks to our friends at Ram. And we're not going to read any emails this week because we've got a lot to talk about with Eric. So we're going to read some emails in the next podcast later this week. So send in your emails to the lounge at ravens.nfl.net. And without any further ado, let's go ahead and jump into that interview.
All right, well, Eric, thanks for coming on with us. And I got to start with this. Obviously, you've heard "In Ozzy We Trust." Have you seen the new trending hashtag is "In DeCosta We Trust"?
Okay.
Have you seen it?
No, I mean, I haven't really seen it. Although, when you've got 3 kids and they're on social media, you do see some pretty strange things, I'll be honest. But I try to stay off that stuff as much as I can. So, I haven't really spent too much time perusing social media and hashtags and things like that.
Well, is there any way you could get Truz tattooed across your chest?
I don't know if I really want to, if I can pull it off. I think some guys can pull it off. And, certainly, I think Lamar is one of those guys. But, I'll be 50 years old next year, and I'm not really sure that someone at that age, 50 years old, can pull that off on their chest.
Well, we do want to say congrats on an awesome draft, man. I mean, really exciting stuff. The fans, the pundits, everybody's really raving about this draft. You got Mel Kiper's only A that he handed out. Be honest, do you look at any of the draft grades kind of like it's a report card coming out?
I think when I was younger, I used to spend more time looking at that kind of stuff. Now, after 25 years or so, the only report card I look at is really wins and losses at the end of the season. That's all I really care about. That's the only thing that really drives me right now is just winning football games. So, some years you get an A and your team plays like a C. Other years you get a C and your team plays like an A+. So to me, perfect scenario would be to get an A in the draft and get an A+ in the regular season and through the playoffs.
All right, so Eric, we're going to dive into all the different players, but just some bigger picture questions to kind of start here. Who was a pick that you were most surprised that player was available once you got on the clock?
I'd probably say J.K. Dobbins just because, he's a really talented player. I understand some people have, there's so much. It seems like the analytics community is just fascinated with the idea of running backs and what's their value and what's their worth, either in free agency or, in the draft. But, as you just look at the player and you look at his skill set, you look at his production and you look at the level he did it at, and you see the individual position specifics that he has and the critical factors, I would say that I was kind of surprised that he fell down to the 55th pick.
You talked about how you thought maybe he could even go in the first round. Was he somebody in the first round that you thought about taking when you're at 28, and then obviously you obviously ended up taking Patrick Queen, but was Dobbins even in the mix a full round earlier?
Well, there were 4 running backs that we thought had, the potential to be first round type guys. And, that was Dobbins and Edwards, Hilaire, and Swift, and Jonathan Taylor from Wisconsin. All 4 of those guys we felt like were really talented. And then after those 2 guys, you had a couple other guys that we thought were really talented as well. Really 3 other guys with Moss, Akers, and Dillon. So we saw 7 running backs that we thought were really talented guys, and there were some others as well. But we felt the first round was very strong this year. We weren't sure if a running back would go in the first round, but in just assessing the level of talent that those 4 guys had, especially, we thought that they were all first round type picks.
Which pick had you the most nervous when it was coming up to you and you're like, oh my God, I just pray to God nobody takes this guy right before we do.
I think Duvernay might have been one of those picks, just because, I think the wide receiver board was such that, we had guys sequenced in all the various rounds. But he was really the guy in the 3rd round that we were most excited about possibly taking at that point. So that would be a guy, I think Malik, to get him at the end of the 3rd round. We sweated that out, or midway through the 3rd round, we sweated that pick out as, thinking he had a chance to come in for us and be a starting linebacker at some point. So, you basically, it's funny, but you basically agonize over every pick if you've got a guy that you want to pick. And so as the picks come off and you get closer and you get closer and you get closer, every pick really feels the same. You're not sure he's going to be there. And it's a bad feeling when somebody comes in and takes your guy when you get swooped. That's a bad feeling, and you never forget it. And I can go back 10, 15 years and remember those guys that gets, taken from you. And that's a scar that never leaves. So it's not a good feeling. But on the flip side, it's a great feeling when there's a guy there that you love and that you covet who just falls out of the sky to you and you're able to pick him.
So you kind of lead into the next question. Were there any scars that you got from this year's draft?
No, the only scar that I really got was I was slicing some bread Thursday, and I cut my finger. I wasn't paying attention. I was cutting a bagel for my son, and I sliced my finger. Not too bad. It could have been bad, but it wasn't. There was a little bit of blood loss. I put a Band-Aid on it, and I went back to work.
You're the king of the draft weekend injuries. I mean, you had the torn Achilles a few years ago. Now you have the finger injury day of.
Yeah. Well, we've had. It seems like you're right about that, Garrett. And so a few years ago, my son Jackson was running on Easter Sunday right before the draft and fell on a laser gun, and it cut his face, and he had to get 4 stitches. And then 2 years ago, on the eve of the draft, I was having dinner with my wife and my mother-in-law, and my sons were sleeping over someone's house, and we got a phone call that my older son, Michael, had fallen off a trampoline and broken his wrist in 2 places.
Oh.
And then this year, I have to say we had another accident that required stitches, and my son Jackson, sliced his finger, and he had to get stitches. And fortunately, Dr. Tucker was able to stitch him up and get him, back to work. He didn't miss any virtual schooling, but it seems like this time of year, every year we've had some traumatic injuries that have happened, and hopefully next year is the exception.
That's crazy. So we got to ask you, I mean, with Patrick Queen, how big of a coup does that feel like? I mean, to get a player of that quality at the biggest need or one of the biggest needs that you have and not have to give up anything to move up, when a lot of people thought you might, does that just feel like a coup when you made that pick?
I think we just try to be as patient, in the board and let the board come to us. We try not to overreact or, to anything that might happen. And, I've learned that from the best and Ozzie. And, I've seen it so many times over the years where he would just wait and that player would just kind of parachute down at his feet. And so, you got to trust the process. And there's something called consensus bias that we study. And the gist of it is that people have a tendency to think that everybody else sees the board and sees the players just like you do. And that's not usually the case. So if you can kind of wrap your fingers around that a little bit, that there is going to be some volatility and players are going to get taken outside that you haven't ranked quite as highly, then you don't have to necessarily panic and trade up to get somebody, because there's probably going to be a guy that falls down to you that you like very much.
That's interesting. Did you find this year, like maybe that you can shut that out? There's a theory that existed basically that a lot of times scouts go and you're at these pro days and there's a lot of conversations that are taking place between them, and that sometimes it can be a bit of a confirmation bias, I guess. Everyone says, "Oh, I like this guy. I like this guy." Did you find that not having that led to any sort of that teams had different boards than compared to most years? And do you kind of have to tell your scouts, like, shut out the outside world from a standpoint of evaluation and what the mock drafts say, and just evaluate the players so that we're not all coming up with the same grades, so to speak?
Yeah, I would think that, when we went back and forth as to what might happen this year, I kind of felt like the lack of information, or the lack of, coverage, as much coverage based on things, might create a little bit more of an irrational market, where you see these random players getting selected at different spots. And I think in some cases we saw that in the first round. I didn't necessarily see it as much in the second round. And I think one of the reasons for that is at the end of the first night, there's so much written about best available players and the guys that are still there. And it's like you see these guys just come off the board pick after pick after pick in the second. But then when you get to the third round and pretty much for the rest of the draft, you start to see more random selection take place. So, I don't think this is probably as traditional of a draft in terms of players coming off as we expected. I still think that it's probably more predictable than it was 15 years ago, maybe, but not as much probably as it has been the last 4, 5, 6, 7 years.
The two guys who are most popular projections to you at 28 were either Queen or Kenneth Murray. Did you go into the draft feeling pretty good that you would have a chance to get one of those two guys?
Well, I don't like to think of it like that, only because then you set yourself up for disappointment and failure. So what we try to do is come up with 5 players that we think we have a realistic chance of getting, and then will we be happy with all 5 players? And so that's what I spend most of my time with, that clump of players. And so what we try to look at is, if we're picking 28, there's a realistic possibility that our selection is going to come from our sequence of 20 to about 25 in the sequence of players that we have rated based on historical data that we have. So I look at those 4 or 5 players between 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, and spend most of my time on those 5 guys, trying to figure out what that order should be and how these guys fit, who's the best selection for us. And if you can do that and have a comfort level with all 5 guys, then I think you sleep at night. When you start to get in trouble is as you start to look at that and you only have 20 players or 21 players that you like, because the indication will be that your pick is probably going to come from about 20, 21, 22 in your sequence. The average is 28 is probably 22. So based on that, you better be happy with those players. And, some years you are and some years you aren't. And so when you see a team like us trade back, oftentimes it means that we don't like our options and we're going to trade back and maybe get some additional picks and then like a guy. So that's kind of where we stood. But with Queen and Murray, we loved both guys, but we loved other guys too. And we had about 4 or 5 or 6 guys that we felt were really qualified to be the pick.
I know you said that the trade lines were pretty quiet when you were coming up to the pick. Once you had Queen on the board, was it all right, we love this guy, he's high in our sequence, it would take a sweetheart of a deal for us to move away?
Well, I think you have to you never want to look at these things, in a vacuum. And so, every offer sort of stands by itself and you have to consider that offer. So, you never want to get into a situation where you're always tied to a guy and say, if this guy's there, we're picking him. I mean, unless you think the guy's going to be Lawrence Taylor,
Right.
Chase Young was there. We were picking Chase Young. We weren't trading away. But, I think that hypothetically, what if somebody had offered us 3 first-round picks?
Right.
Up to pick 28? We probably would have considered that. So I think you just have to assess each trade for what it is, look at it. We try to plan. One of my jobs prior to the draft is coming up with basically strategic possibilities, scenarios that we can look at with teams that they might offer, where we want to go back to, what clump of players we're interested in trading back and still getting. So all those things sort of factor in when we talk about trading at each pick, whether it's, 28, 55, 60, 106, whatever that might be. We're looking at what we want to do with that pick. Who are the players that we're definitely going to pick? Who are the players that we would consider moving away from? And if we do, what do we hope to achieve value-wise by making a trade back?
One more question on trades. On draft night, on the first night, when CeeDee Lamb started to fall a little bit, he gets to 16 and then 17. I think the chatter started on social media as whether you could move up and get him. Was he somebody that you had all considered moving up for? And at 17, or would it have likely had to have taken him getting into, say, the 20s to consider moving up for a guy like that?
Obviously CeeDee is a great player. We thought there were some really good players in this draft, the receiver position. We loved Justin Jefferson. We loved Henry Ruggs. We loved Jerry Jeudy, all those guys. We loved Ayuk, T. Higgins. We felt like this was a really strong group of receivers. So, you consider everything, as I said, and you look at the players and you kind of assess who's still available, and you make your decisions based off of that. I think that in this year's class, we felt like we had a realistic chance to address the receiver position in the 2nd round or the 3rd round or the 4th round or even the 5th or 6th round, which we did. So, I think that you're trying to build a team. You're not trying to build a team with one player. You're trying to build a team with as many good players as you can. And you've got to assess the draft, the strengths and weaknesses of the draft. And not only the strengths and weaknesses, but the value of the players as to when you think you can pick those players and make your decisions based off of that.
All right, let's talk a little bit about Patrick Queen, the player. What did you think the first time that you flipped on the tape of him? And does he remind you at all or very much of Devin White, who he followed at LSU?
Well, he's got a smaller sample size of play. But what we saw was a guy that was very, very fast, a strong, explosive tackler, excellent sideline to sideline. Outstanding in space, outstanding cover guy, and an excellent blitzer. Instinctive, made a lot of plays, and played big in big games. So, I'm hesitant to make a lot of comparisons to players. I think his game stands by itself. But he's got an NFL skill set. He's got the tools to help us. We interviewed him at the Combine. We were very impressed with his interview. And we think this is a guy that can come in and help our football team on defense right away in a lot of different ways. So I know our coaches were really excited about him. When you get a guy like him, I call him a DNA match because our coaches and our scouts all felt really strongly about Patrick. So it makes it easy as an evaluator and as a decision maker to pick a guy like that.
Eric, would you say if he had played in more games that he would have probably been drafted quite a bit higher? I mean, in one hand, people were knocking him because, he wasn't a starter, but until his junior year. But on the other hand, that kind of helped us, I feel like, in that it made him available at 28.
I don't know the answer to that. So, I just know that he was a guy we liked, and I don't know how other teams felt about him. I think people liked him, but he was there when we picked. So, it was really good for us that he was there. He was the best player by far when we made that pick, but he also filled a huge need on our football team. So, to me, when you get a guy that's the very best player and a huge need, it's an A+.
Hey, what'd you think of Lamar's when he went live on Instagram, called him Ray Lewis Jr.?
Yeah, I mean, that's Lamar put that out there, so we'll I think that Ray Lewis, I was to start in 1996, when Ray came in, and Ray is just a player that just played at a different level than just about anybody I've ever seen. So I think we can all aspire to be the Ray Lewis of our profession. And, if Patrick can even approach that, I think it would be wonderful. I think, playing in this city, hopefully he can develop a relationship with a guy like Ray. Would be awesome to learn from a guy like Ray. As amazing as Ray was and as amazing as Ray still is to this city, I think it would be fantastic. And if he could even approach that level, if Patrick could even approach that level, we'd all be very blessed.
You kind of mentioned this when you called Patrick, but was there a special feeling for you drafting a first-round inside linebacker after, Ozzie had taken Ray and then C.J. Mosley, and now you kind of had your crack at it?
Yeah, well, I think Baltimore in some respects is, when people think about us, they think about defense, right? And they think about linebackers, and they think about the rugged style of play and all that. And so for me, drafting Hollywood last year was wonderful and great and exciting. That was kind of a different type of pick, I think. This harkens back to the old school Ravens. We took a linebacker from the SEC, and I think this guy really is going to fit our culture really well and bring a lot to the team.
All right, so I got to ask you about one guy in particular, Eric, because I had him in my Ravens 7-round mock draft, and that's A.J. Epinesa, who I thought, just watching him, just looked like a Raven, right? So as the second round's unfolding, I'm seeing Epinesa slide, and I'm like, oh, man. Here we go. We could get Queen and Epinesa. So I got to ask you, when the Bills took him at 54, was there any part of you that was like, you've got to be kidding me?
You know what? I think we were just ecstatic to get KJ. JK. We were ecstatic to get him. I think, he was by far the highest rated guy that we had on the board. And we kind of felt like he just fell out of the sky right to us for the type of team that we are, to get a running back like that. And I think Epinesa is a guy that's a talented guy. And obviously, the Ravens, we've got a great relationship with people at Iowa. And so, he's a player that we liked. But to get a guy like Dobbins in the second round with his talent and his skill set and us being such a running team, there's no question in my mind that he would have been the pick for us regardless, and a guy that we really did covet.
That's the best answer that we're going to have the entire podcast, because here's what that just did. That just basically – so I had Queen in the mock at 28, so I nailed that. So basically, not only did Mink miss the first-round pick, now we know that even if Epinesa had made it to our second-round pick, we still weren't picking him. So that just shows you that Mink's draft analysis is something that nobody should really pay attention to. So thank you so much for that.
Yeah, well, we've always felt that way anyways. I mean, there's a lot of things that I'll read on the website, but if it starts talking about the draft, it's probably just going to get passed over.
Wait a second. I took Hayden Hurst. I know this was high on Lamar.
This is, he's got to go back to the old hits, because nothing new is
and Orlando.
Resonating. So big miss for him. Anyway, with Dobbins, does he remind you of Ray Rice? Because I've been watching him for the past several years at Ohio State, and I remember seeing him as a freshman there and felt like this guy looks like Ray Rice, probably in part because he's, a shorter running back, stout guy. He's taken it number 55, just like Ray. So do you feel like he could be a similar... What's that?
The situation, they both had a veteran.
You got a veteran running back who's already in place, who's a starter, which is similar to what Ray came in.
Is he wearing 27? Do we know that?
I saw that on social media. I was like...
Yeah, I don't know. You would have a better sense of that. Do you approve the numbers?
I don't know. I haven't seen that. So, I think he's a guy that is strong. He's a darting guy. He's got very, very good speed through the line of scrimmage. He's explosive. He's able to run low to the ground with good balance. He's a good knee bender. He's got excellent lateral agility, ability to make people miss. But what I like most about him is if he's got a crease, he's gone. He's a guy that has an extra gear. to the second and third levels of the defense, and he can make big plays, and he did that in every game this year. So he's got a little bit of a game breaker style to him. I think he's a guy that he runs low, he's strong, he's physical, he can take a hit. I think in the passing game, he's got capable hands. I think he was not used quite as much in the passing game, but, compared to Ray Rice, Ray Rice wasn't used in the passing game either very much in college, and then he got to us, and he was like a revelation for us in the passing game. So this is a talented guy. I think he's going to fit in really well style-wise, and he's going to be a guy that will really help Mark and Gus and Justice. And now I think we've got 4 running backs. And us being the type of team we are, I think just adding another guy with his skill set makes us a very tough team to defend.
Yeah, do you basically look at this? I was surprised with the running back pick just because you have good guys that are already in place. And it's hard to, there's one ball to go around. But Dobbins is so good, obviously, that you just can't pass him up. How do you view what happens with like Gus and Justice? Do you just think of it as we run the ball more than any other team, and you got to have a really good stable of running backs, and we'll find ways that ultimately Gus Edwards and Justice Hill are involved in the offense?
I would equate it to us, last year having the tight ends that we had, the 3 tight ends. And then, Greg did an amazing job of taking those tight ends and really creating something special that made us very tough for defenses to play. And now we've got the 4 running backs, and they all do different things well. And it just makes us, I think, a really, really well-rounded team that's tough to defend. And these guys all can do different things. They should be fresh through 4 quarters. I think we protect ourselves in case of injuries and different things like that. And it fortifies us. It makes us stronger, and it gives us a guy with home run potential.
Had you guys kind of been looking for that stud running back in the draft for a little while?
We're trying to find studs at every position, Ryan, honestly. But to get a guy like this, I think where we did is a good move, for us. And I know some people were probably frustrated that we didn't take a wide receiver there, an offensive lineman there, but it's still about talent. This league is still about talent and adding talent and stacking talent and talent and talent. And we just felt like this guy, based on who we are as a football team and based on what we know about him, this guy was a great fit. And so, I think we're blessed. We saw the impact that Mark had this year, and we've seen what Gus has been able to do the last couple of years. And we saw glimpses of Justice's potential last year, especially towards the end of the year as he started to make some plays for us. And we're thrilled with what we have there now at the position. We've got 4 guys that we feel we can play and that can make plays for us. And they're going to make us better. They're going to make Lamar better. They're going to make the receivers better, and they're going to make the offense better. So, I think – and they're going to make our defense better in a lot of different ways. And so we're excited about that, and we can't wait to get started with those guys.
So let's move on through some of the other picks. In the 3rd round, you get Justin Madubuike. And there was a lot of talk about pass rush coming into this draft, and then you get an interior pass rusher in him. Did you view the interior pass rush basically on equal footing as to an outside pass rusher? Like, so often when we talk about pass rush, automatically our minds go to the outside linebacker in that spot. But did you view the interior pass rush as just as big of a priority, and was that part of the attraction with Justin?
Well, I think we just wanted some guys that, talented players. And we looked at Justin and we saw a guy that had a unique skill set. He's very explosive. He ran a 4.8 at the combine. He's a guy that can get to the passer. He's twitchy. We see players like him on the inside, and they can just wreak havoc. You see guys like, Aaron Donald, for instance, and you see when you can get that inside pass rush, what that means. Geno Atkins, those kind of guys, you see what that does. It makes those outside guys even better. So I think Justin's a guy that has talent in his body to be able to be an inside pass rusher. He's twitchy. He's strong with his hands. He plays hard. He's got excellent penetration ability, lateral agility, natural explosive qualities. So we feel like this is a guy that has a chance to develop over time with Joe Cullen coaching him. He can develop as an inside pass rusher and be a really good player for us. Now,
Devin Duvernay might have been my favorite pick. And you guys talked about the speed and wanting speed first and foremost at wide receiver. Can you just go into a little bit of that thought process and why that was, in particular, that trait was so important?
Well, he's an explosive guy. He's really, really fast. He's a highly competitive guy with strong hands. I don't think I saw a drop this year. He had over 100 catches. He's really good with the football in his hands. He's a guy that can break tackles. He runs with an angry style. I think he's highly competitive. So, he's just a guy that as I watched this tape, I got excited about him and his potential for us. He's the type of guy that when you watch him play, players in general, typically, if you watch enough tape, you get a vibe about them. There's a vibe that they sort of emit. And I would say with Devin, he's an angry football player. I like his style of play. I like his energy. I like his competitive spirit. I like his toughness. And I like his speed. And I think those things translate to Baltimore really well. I think he's a good fit for who we are. And I think that he's going to be a guy that's going to help us.
Did you like that play where he ran over Grant Delpit?
Yeah, I just love a good, tough football player, and I think about guys that we've had, some of our best receivers, and we've had a few here and there. And I think about some of the best guys, and I go back to these highly competitive guys, and their styles are all different. You had a guy like Mace, you had a guy like Steve Smith, you had a guy like Anquan Bolden. They all had totally different games, but they were all highly competitive warriors on the football field. And so that's what I see. When I watch a guy like Devin, I see some of those same things. Now, their styles might be different. The skills might be different. Strengths different. But the mentality that I see, the effort, the drive, the determination, the competitive toughness, to me, that reminds me of those guys.
So Malik Harrison, I guess the write-up or the feeling on him is he's kind of your old school downhill thumper of a linebacker. But are people sleeping on his athleticism? I mean, this is a guy who was a high school quarterback. Is his athleticism being overlooked a little bit?
Well, I think people put him in that box because he's big. He's almost 250 pounds, so he's got some length, he's got some size, so people want to naturally assume that he's that type of player, that he's a big downhill thumper. And he can do that. But I think he's a little bit more versatile than people give him credit for. He is a good athlete, even a 4.66. He's a good knee bender. He can play in space. He can run. He's got good length. So I think he's a guy that can be a 3-down linebacker for us without question. And he played really well this year for Ohio State, had a great season. And we think he complements Patrick Queen very well. We see two guys that should come in and really right away compete to play from day one. And I think that makes us better as a defense.
Do you guys like doubling up at a certain position because those guys get to kind of grow up with each other, push each other, battle against each other? Like, we've seen so much success with that at tight end, at wide receiver in years past. Do you really like that?
Yeah, I think we've done that in the past, and we would do that if we really like the second guy. So I think it speaks to how much we like Malik. We did that when we took Ben Grubbs, and then we came back and took Marshall Yanda. We did that with Ed Dixon and Dennis Pitta, and we did that with Hayden and Mark Andrews. So, I think if we take that second guy, the fans should look at that and say, wow, they must really like this guy because they've already taken a guy at that position. They're taking this guy, so he's got to be by far the highest rated guy on the board.
Interesting. And when you look at some of those past guys that you mentioned, like the guy taking like Mark Andrews, for example, has been an incredibly productive player, and you got him a couple rounds later.
Well, Yanda. Yanda's a Hall of Famer.
Right, exactly. So I think that kind of speaks to what you're talking about. So on the O-line, Tyree Phillips and Ben Bredesen. First of all, with Tyree, do you like these guys out of East Mississippi Community College? Last Chance U? Is Darius Smith also from there?
Yeah, I didn't know that. This was a guy that I think if I had to say one guy that Coach Harbaugh was really a sponsor, the scouts liked him. We did a lot of work on him, but Coach Harbaugh saw this guy back in January or February and really kind of became enthralled with his ability in our offense. And so he's a guy that's got size and physicality and strength and natural leverage and different things. He's an underrated athlete. He had a good week at the Senior Bowl in pass protection. We think he has a really good chance to kick inside at guard and be a player for us. And, Coach Harbaugh was really excited about this pick, and he's been talking to me about Phillips now since the combine. And so that was the guy that was on our radar from the combine. We were excited to get him. We felt like we could get him at the end of the third or the fourth round. There were some other offensive linemen that got picked before we could pick in the third. And at that point, really the mission was, let's get Phillips.
Did you see that, nicknamed Big Country, he said he'll shoot a possum, skin it, and eat it.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of protein I hear in possum, so.
And Ben Bredesen, actually, he's got an interesting story too, in that his mom was a dog shower, and a competitive dog shower. Do you know these things? Like, they said that on ESPN. Did you already know the story about his mom showing dogs and throwing the second place medal out the window?
Well, at least he's not skinning those dogs and eating them.
All right, so yes, Eric's got the headphones on now. The guys were cutting his grass, so he had to get the headphones out. But Ben Bredesen, what is it you like about him? And do you, in all honesty, like the competitive kind of family spirit that it seems like he has?
Well, obviously we know a lot about Ben, through our relationship with Michigan. He's played a ton of football. He's a physical guy, tough guy. Left guard, fits the Ravens, good size. He's a guy with experience. He's highly intelligent, going to be able to pick things up very quickly. And he just kind of fits us. We've had a lot of success in the past with experienced Big Ten offensive linemen who have come in and played for us and played really well. So he's, I think, the next in a long line of those type of guys, and we're excited about him.
So is Harb sending you any wine? I mean, you got back-to-back offensive linemen that he had to love, Tyree, and then you get a Michigan guy. I mean, that sounds like a bottle of wine to me.
He'll just probably toss me a Gatorade or something, but that's about it.
Yeah, purple Gatorade. Just as a note on that, I think that not only were you the GM over the weekend, but you were also our greatest content creator. So we got to give you a pat on the back for that.
Yeah, well, I feel like I've learned a lot about myself in the last month or so, and I have some other skills. I'm not just the guy that picks the players, and so I've come up with some content. Maybe I could be a producer at some point. I'm also a school teacher, that I'm pretty good at that, I think. I've been fixing stuff. Technology, I'm good with IT around the house, Wi-Fi issues. I'm good setting up printers and TVs and things in my office. So I have maybe a chance to do some IT stuff as well. And also, I've started doing, my wife, Lacey, has started a cooking group, on Facebook. And so I have made some videos, which people would be surprised, but I am a mixologist, and I've created a couple of videos of myself mixing some different cocktails for people, and I think they're going to be highly successful. They're very popular right now, so I think I'm pretty good at it.
Wait a second, are these on YouTube? Can we put these out?
They're on Facebook. I don't know exactly how you can see them, but they're on Facebook. My wife,
okay.
There's a couple of hundred people on there, so I've, I think people are excited about my content, and that might be something I can do in the future.
Well, what was the cocktail of choice after the draft on Saturday?
Well, it's interesting. I've had a couple. I actually have about 5 or 6 go-to cocktails, but some of my videos, I did a pisco sour, which is a Peruvian drink.
Egg white.
Yes, exactly. Yes. Gotta find, the pisco, which is hard to find. It's a Peruvian. It's like a brandy, and it's hard to find. You've got to go to a good liquor store. And then, so I made a pisco sour for everybody. And then the other day, post-draft, I made a post-draft sidecar, which is probably my drink of choice. Which
That's a good one.
Which is another, brandy, cognac type drink with Cointreau and some lemon juice, a little sugar. So, but I've got some. I like a good gimlet every now and then. I like an old fashioned every now and then. you know. So I keep doing that. So I've really learned a lot about myself over the last month, and it's been great. And I find out that I have a lot of different skills, and production may be the next thing that I kind of delve into.
Nice.
Well, I mean, this is the lounge, so I'm pretty sure we just got our bartender. You can come hang out in the lounge anytime, Eric.
Okay. Good deal.
That actually did make me think of one other thing when you were talking about IT. I had to wonder, how did Ozzy handle the virtual draft? Because if we're talking about IT experts, I wouldn't put Ozzy on the list.
No, he was on mute a few times. He was. I have to be honest. But so was John. He was on mute a few times too. And they're doing this. And I'm like, Coach, you're on mute. You're on mute. But it all worked out. I have to say, pretty seamlessly. David McDonald did a great job. He works, over in scouting for us, but in IT, he's a developer, software developer, and he's a great, invaluable resource for me throughout this process and just building out our systems that we use to draft, and then the infrastructure, how we want to design the office and all that, getting everything to work the way it did was amazing. One of the biggest challenges I think this year for me, was the draft was not challenging from the standpoint of running the draft the way we did. The hardest part for me was just not physically sitting next to Oz and Pat. And we've sat together for years and years and years, 24 years. And, it really is. I mean, the conversations that you have when Ozzy was the GM, the conversations we'd have about players and the strategies. And then when I became GM, the same conversations. So, not having that, was challenging. And it probably in some ways made the draft a little bit less enjoyable for me, not to be able to spend the time physically with those guys. I did call Ozzy. There'd be times where, you see this door behind me, that's a closet. And I would go in there because there was a camera over here, the NFL camera, ESPN NFL camera. So what I would do, I don't know if you guys will be able to see me right now, but I'll show you guys what I would do. So I would take my phone and I would walk over here and I would call Ozzy and I would open up this door and I would go in here. And then I would make my calls because I didn't like these cameras always staring at me. So that was I called it my panic closet instead of a panic room. If I wanted the conversation with either Steve or John or Ozzy or whoever it might be, Joe Ortiz or George, I'd go to my closet and make the cell phone call. Even though I was told these cameras had no audio and couldn't actually hear me, I just felt more comfortable going into the closet.
You didn't have a dog sitting at the computer though, like Belichick.
No, I had my dogs. My dogs were here a lot, but my youngest dog, Pepper, she's a black lab puppy. She's not real well trained right now, and I was afraid she might eat some wires or something and sabotage all the technology. So we tried to keep her out of here as much as possible.
So, one of the things that I'm curious about is, one of the symbols I think at the end of the draft is in typical years is that we start to smell the cigar smoke, make its way around the building. Steve lighting up the cigar at the end of the draft. He loves the draft, I know. How does his involvement at all change, because of the virtual draft and what was his role in, talking through trades and all the different things that go on draft weekend?
Well, you're right about that. Steve loves the draft and he wasn't able to be here. So I think from that standpoint, it was challenging, but I think he also immersed himself in the whole process more than ever. And he was on more calls, and he and I spoke more on the phone than probably ever before about the draft and strategies and different things. And he had some good ideas, and he likes to contribute, and he's smart and he's got a great mind for strategy and different things. So his input is always invaluable to me and to John. He's a part of the process. So he actually got on Zoom and, he handled that pretty well, and all the different WebEx calls and different things. And he was involved in a lot of the discussions leading up to the draft. So it's kind of cool that we could actually do it. And, I think that in the case of someone like Ozzy or Steve, to see them actually, understand the technology and then actually embrace it and get it to work. I mean, I think if I had to feel bad for anybody, I'd probably feel bad for Steve's IT guy down in Florida, because I'm sure he had a lot of phone calls from Steve, about the technology and why doesn't this work this way, or I can't get this to work. But, Steve was really involved, and, to have that input, I think is a huge help to me. And, one of the special things about the way that we do the draft is we try to include as many people as possible and really make it a team effort. It's not all about one person. This year, maybe it felt that way because it was virtual and I'm by myself. But in reality, this draft probably required more people to administer this draft than any other draft we've ever had.
That's cool. All right, I want to talk a little bit more about some of these day 3 picks. With Prochet, at what point did you know, all right, the value's too good, I have to trade up and make a move to go get this guy?
Yeah, well, he was a guy that we were considering in the 5th round. We thought maybe we could get him in the 6th round, but we didn't have a 6th round pick. I thought there probably wouldn't be a strong chance we could get him in the 7th round. So, he was a guy that we liked as a wideout, but also as a return man. We had a chance to see him down in Mobile at the Senior Bowl, catch punts and do all that. And we watched his tape. We got some great information about the kid. We felt really good about his makeup and about his skill set. So it made sense for us to get back in. And, we had acquired that pick from the Steelers for Wormley, who we traded this year. And, I was just thinking about it, like, would I trade Chris Wormley for James Prochet? And I said, right now, this guy's got a chance to be our punt returner. He's caught a gazillion balls. He's a highly competitive guy. He just wants to win. He's got great hands. He's a savvy guy. He's very tough and motivated. So this makes a lot of sense. And I think we're going to have some comp picks next year as well. So to me, it became something that I thought we should do. And at that point, I started a dialogue with Minnesota. They had 1 million picks in the 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th round. So it just became something that made sense to me to do to get the guy that we wanted.
Yeah, Minnesota was probably happy. They're like, I'm running out of players here to pick on day 3. Like, just move it to next year. Yeah,
we've been in that position before too. And after a while, in some years you just look at the board and you just have no idea who to pick. Nobody really looks that good to you anymore. You're so tired. You're tired of calling guys on the phone, and you just don't know how to make the pick. So, that didn't happen to us this year. In fact, I was trying to get, we saw some good players on the board still in the late 6th, early 7th round. So we were hoping to get a few additional picks. One of the nice things for us to trade up in the 7th was we really did like Stone quite a bit, Geno Stone. We had gotten a lot of good information about him at Iowa, and we liked his tape. We thought he was a guy who would have a chance to come in and play on special teams for us and develop as a safety. Even though we like our safety group very much, we saw a skill set here that, we've been successful with guys like him in the past. So we really wanted him. But this year, there were 3 or 4 other guys as well that we probably would have taken in the 7th round, felt really good about had we had some additional picks.
Did you get any of them as undrafted guys?
We did. Nice. I can't announce those guys yet because they haven't taken any kind of physical or anything. So that would be prohibitive for me to announce these guys. But I do think that we got, as I'm looking at my list right now, I think we got 3 or 4 guys that we might have drafted in the 7th round. We got them as free agents.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, some PFF, I think, had Geno Stone as the biggest steal of the draft. Like, what was everybody, Daniel Jeremiah, even on TV, was talking about, like, what happened here? What was the rest of the league missing on Geno?
Yeah, I don't know. I can't speak to other teams, but I just know, for us, specifically Joey Cleary, who's a scout for us, he had done all the safeties leading up to the draft, and this was one of his favorite picks, one of his sleepers at that position this year. So I think Joey does a good job, and the fact that he had so much conviction about Geno made me feel really good about the pick.
Nice. You can see
All
my
right, Eric,
kids
so
busting in here on the draft, Eric. He's busting in here on our draft talk. What did you have any moments with your kids where you had to be like, all right, everybody out of the room?
Yeah, we had a couple moments. We did. We had a couple. I'll be honest. It wasn't that the fact that they were coming in here, but we had a couple moments because, we have, Wi-Fi here, and the Wi-Fi is actually in this closet right here. And so I have a good connection. The one blessing about doing the draft in this room is the Wi-Fi. However, David McDonald, being the IT guy, he was also here throughout the draft to make sure that everything worked. And so he was connected. Well, in other parts of this house, the Wi-Fi is not quite as good. And when the kids are on video games, streaming and all that, it crushes the Wi-Fi. So at one point in the draft, David came running in. He said, I've got no Wi-Fi out here. Well, if David doesn't have Wi-Fi, it means everything could just kind of fall apart because he's doing everything for all the other people. He's putting the draft board up. He's on all the different calls. He's basically the emergency guy in case something happens to me. He can turn a pick in and he'll do all that kind of stuff. So he came running in and he was like, man, I don't know what's going on. The Wi-Fi is just gone up here. Well, I said, what do you think it could be? And he goes, I don't know. Are your kids playing video games? So we go down to the basement and Jackson and Michael are both playing Fortnite and, whatever they're playing. So I had to lower the boom on them and basically be like, guys, you got to get off the video games, okay? There's a million Ravens fans out there that don't want you playing video games right now, I can promise you. So they got off. But, the good thing was, when the draft ended, I saw those guys and I said, hey, boys, guess what? You can start playing Call of Duty now, or whatever it is that you guys play. They were all excited. They went running downstairs and they were playing video games. So we got it all worked out.
Here's the worst part. They could have been playing Hollywood and Madden or something like that, sabotage from the team.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Hey, Eric, before we let you go, what was up with the green dinosaur that was on your desk?
Yeah, that's my buddy now. Okay. That guy, if you guys saw my cocktail videos, you'd see him in those videos. That's Pandemic Pete. That's what his nickname is. And that guy, so what happened was, I'll tell you the whole story about Pandemic Pete quickly. Lacey was on a Zoom call, okay? And she needed something to hold her phone up. So she grabbed Pandemic Pete. Well, that wasn't his name at the time. She was using it to hold her phone up as she did the call. So then I was doing one of my cocktail videos, and Pete happened to be in the video. People liked it. They got this green dinosaur, so he kind of became the good luck charm for me, Pete, over the course of the 3 days. So I had Pete, and it was kind of like, okay, it's a T-Rex, Let's be the dinosaur. Let's be fierce, Let's take this thing, So Pete was with me all weekend, and he became my mascot throughout the draft process, Pandemic Pete.
That's awesome. That is awesome. Wait. I have one more news. That would be a good one to end on, but I'm going to ruin it with one more. You think you could envision Pandemic Pete signing a veteran outside linebacker at sometime soon?
You have to ask Pete. I don't know. Right now he's out in the kitchen right now on the counter, but I think you have to see. It's hard to say. There were a lot of strange things that happened this week around here with different things. There were a lot of omens, and at one point, I don't know if I can show you guys this, but so I had the police here all weekend because we had security, and so at one point, the police this guy sent me a picture. The policeman sent me a picture in the middle of the night. He said, "Look what I just found outside your window." And he said, "I think they're spying on you." And I'd heard these guys out there, but I had never seen them. I don't know if you guys can see that, but there were these two owls.
Couple owls, yeah.
Yeah. And that's a real picture right outside my office window. And I was afraid these guys were trying to, steal the draft board or something, you know, like. But these guys got caught outside my window, and you know the state police were concerned about it enough to investigate. We made sure that they were in fact not, you know, like drone owls or anything like that.
Exactly.
They were real
That's
owls,
my question.
yeah. So we caught these guys out there, and you know, and I named these guys actually. So it's Tony and Debbie for Anthony Fauci and Deborah Burks. But these guys are right outside my window, and I heard them this morning. And they seem happy about the draft, so I'm glad about that.
Nice.
We got Pandemic Pete, we got Tony, we got Debbie. we
You
got
gotta
cocktail
send-
videos.
You
There's
gotta
all
send
sorts
him
of
over
things
to
we'll learn
Harbaugh's
today.
house. You gotta send him to Harbaugh's house. He's got all the birdhouses. That was the other thing. Harbs is a birdhouse guy apparently, or Ingrid, somebody.
Who knew?
Now we know.
Who knew? I mean, I bet you, if you guys research this, I bet you there's a name for people that collect birdhouses. Now, I don't know what that name is, but I bet you there's a name for those people. You know,
They're
who knew
birdists.
John Harbaugh was a birdhouse collector extraordinaire? You know, nobody.
What'd you think of his haircut?
I can't hear you though. I think the audio's bad.
Well, you need to send that lawnmower crew over to my house because I could use one. I don't care who it is with the weed whacker, what they're using, I could use it.
Just get some clippers.
There you go.
You can do it yourself.
Well, Eric, thank you so much for joining us. Congrats again on an awesome draft. We're all excited. All of Baltimore is excited. Congrats, man.
All right, hopefully see you guys soon.
All right, we'll be looking
thanks.
for those
Stay
cocktail
safe.
videos.
Yeah. Yes.
See ya.
All right. Well, good stuff from Eric. I feel like, you know, a sidecar is in order after that interview, just to kind of celebrate, put the cherry on top on this draft.
Well, I know what I'm doing when I'm done with this is I'm gonna find the DeCosta cocktail videos.
That's the first thing. I'm about to
Yes.
hit up Lacey DeCosta with that Facebook friend request.
Well, you know that he was impressed at my knowledge of the Pisco Sour.
Yeah, that did leave a good impression on him.
Yeah,
That
the
did.
Pisco Sour. That's a Christie favorite, actually. It's got
Okay.
egg white in there, and then it's got that Pisco rum and lime. It's a good one.
I think I've had it. I'll take that. I mean, really, who am I to turn down a cocktail? Any cocktail, quite frankly.
Like you said, this is the lounge. This is the
Exactly. This is what we're here for, is cocktail talk.
Right. All right, so before we go, we want to thank our friends at Ram again. If you've been reading through scouting reports, you know that Ram trucks are the Motor Trend back-to-back truck of the year. The Ram 1500 is a top pick with an available Hemi V8 engine, e-torque hybrid technology, and a 12-inch touchscreen. Plus, it offers a truckload of available features. Same with the hard-working Ram 3500 heavy duty. So for generous cash allowances and great lease offers, go to ram.com to find your local Ram dealer and take advantage of the great deals that are going on right now. So go ahead and get that done. Like I said, we're going to read some emails in the episode later this week. So go ahead and send those in to the lounge at ravens.nfl.net.
Thanks for listening, and we'll be back with you later this week as we get kind of a film breakdown. We're going to look at the Ravens rookie class from an X's and O's standpoint and really dive into it with Ken McCusick, who joined us earlier, and a lot of fans really liked having on. So make sure you tune back in on Thursday when we'll drop that pod. Thanks for listening.